The Hasselblad X2D, should you buy one used? And at what price point does it really make sense to invest in Hasselblad? Okay, we're gonna get into all of this, and make sure to stick around to the end for a compilation of tips and tricks for using Hasselblad X series cameras that I haven't seen all together in one place. A little bit about me. I'm Chase, I'm a professional photographer and videographer based in Los Angeles, and I've shot for all kinds of corporate clients, individuals, personal brands, and I love bringing artistic practice into the world of business. So to answer the biggest question first, at what price does it make sense to pick one of these up on the used market, compared to an older Hasselblad camera like the X1D Mark II or the latest from the full-frame mirrorless series of cameras from Canon, Nikon, Sony, Panasonic? I think the answer is below $6,000. And before you go scouring the internet for those kind of deals, here's what you need to know. If you can buy it from a photographer friend who's offloading theirs for the new X2D Mark II, or at somewhere like Sammy's Camera, that's your best bet, because online sites like MPB and KEH, while they really have a great selection, just know that they are adding on a premium on top for the used equipment, so you're not going to get the absolute best deal. But I think as time goes on and more people start selling their X2Ds in favor of the new camera, you might start finding even those sub $6,000 deals on MPB. Now you're going to be like, okay Chase, but the lenses. We all know that Hasselblad lenses are ridiculously expensive, right? I mean, they're way more than the Canon or Nikon or Sony lenses, right? Not necessarily. I picked up this 45 3.5 for, wait for it, under $1,000, like way under $1,000. And I also got a 90mm 3.2, which is the older series of XCD lenses, but I got it for just over $1,000. This is at Sammy's Camera, where, like I mentioned, you can really get some great deals if you know the people there. Get into your Sammy's on Fairfax and get to know the awesome people up on the top floor. If you are looking to get into the wide angle zooms or the 35 to 100mm zoom, those are still going to be quite expensive. Now let's compare this camera to an R5 Mark II. If you can get a great deal used like I did, the price is not so far off. Then if you think about the lenses, you're definitely spending way more on RF glass than you would if you found some really great deals buying used Hasselblad XCD lenses, like this 45mm and 90mm, and I have to do more research into some of the other lenses, but I am looking into those options for future lenses, and maybe I'll make another video about that. Let's get into the pros. 100 megapixels, that's really the selling point of this camera over the older X1D Mark II, is if you're gonna go Hasselblad, why not go for their best sensor, even though it is, I believe, made by Sony, but this is a really incredible sensor, and the Hasselblad color solution really makes a difference. The skin tones look beautiful, and I've never seen a better image on the back of the camera screen than I have with this Hasselblad camera. I mean, look at that beautiful sensor. Now keep in mind that this is the crop sensor version of true medium format. So on the Hasselblad H series of cameras, that's a much bigger sensor than this, but this is substantially bigger than full frame. So it's not the true film medium format sensor, but you have a nice depth of field fall off, and those 100 megapixels are really amazing. I mean, you can zoom in so far, it's incredible. I can see myself, the light so clearly in the subject's eyes, and I've even done some still life where you can really get a sense of the detail if you have it on a tripod and you're slowing down and you make sure everything's tack sharp. It's stunning, and I can't wait to print some of those images super big, maybe even wall size. We'll see. Another thing I've been really impressed by with this camera is the image stabilization. Even on my Canon R5, I find myself not really wanting to shoot at a 30th of a second or a 20th of a second, because I know I'm going to get some shake. But with this camera, with the 7 stops of image stabilization, I'm shooting at a 30th actually a lot of the time when I really want the lowest ISO available for that best quality from the sensor. And it's really impressive. I never have to think twice about getting a shaky image. I've never really had to push it further than a 20th or even a 15th of a second, but really impressive, and it's great for night shots, because I'll get to the ISO in a little bit with the cons list, but safe to say the lower shutter speeds on this camera are really impressive. I've invested in these older series of XCD primes, and you might be thinking, well, f3.5, f3.2, what's the point of getting this Hasselblad camera medium format if you're not, getting a 2.5 lens that's super shallow depth of field? But actually I've noticed that even at 3.5, the depth of field fall off is really buttery, really smooth, And I see that nice buttery transition much more than I do on my Canon R5 and a 1.4 prime. So I'm really impressed with the rendering of these lenses compared with this sensor. I don't notice any difference in quality. In fact, it has a more elevated feeling to it versus full frame, where I feel like the fall off can be quite sharp. The next thing I want to talk about is the construction of this camera. I mean, it is beautiful, as you can see from my little handheld cam here. Every piece is just precision engineered. It has a really nice feel in the hand. It's all metal. It feels solid, and everything's just so well built. The buttons feel solid. The shutter button, listen to that. So beautifully tactile. I love this camera, and it feels so good in the hand. The next thing to talk about, and maybe my favorite feature of the camera, kind of underrated, is the screen. I've never seen a more beautiful big screen on a camera, and it makes me look back at my R5 and be like, oh, I don't know. It doesn't look as good. I can't see the images as large. I don't really know what I'm getting. I don't feel like I really understand the quality of the light or the depth of field when I'm shooting on this camera. I'm so used to working with the files that I know I can pull something out of them in post, but with the Hasselblad, it's like, boom, I instantly know what I'm getting, and I don't even have to put it on the big computer screen to know that I've got a good shot. On this Hasselblad, it takes up most of the back of the camera, and I really want to see that out of more manufacturers because I think it's really an amazing thing, and it makes you feel inspired when you're shooting with it because the screen is just so big. It feels intuitive, it's beautifully simple, and it's really easy to navigate and to touch and swipe around. The screen of the camera isn't just big, bright, and beautiful, but the way the images look on the back of the screen is much different than any other camera that I've used. I've used Leicas, Canons, Sonys, Nikons, the Fuji cameras like the GFX series, that's also the same medium format sensor as the Hasselblad cameras, and I've noticed that the images on the back of the Hasselblad screen look almost edited. They look like vibrant with natural skin tones. You have to just keep in mind to get the white balance right because that'll really help you when you're viewing the images with the subject, and it really inspires confidence when you're shooting. I know we're talking a lot about the looks of the camera, but the fact is that there's one more benefit with the looks, and that's when you're photographing a subject, they're looking at you, looking through your camera, they can tell it's a different kind of machine. They had never seen a camera that looks like it, and I think everyone at this point has seen a professional Canon or Sony camera pointed at them, and it has kind of a utilitarian, all black plastic feel, which is fine. I mean, I love my Canon camera, but this is in a league of its own. People are asking, oh, what is that? Or if they heard of the name Hasselblad, they are like, oh, it has some sort of mystique to it. And they photograph differently. They understand that you're gonna be slowing down, that it's more of a reverential process. It's more of a journey together versus just, oh, let me take a few snaps of you. It makes the connection between me and the subject that much more special. And that's in an age when photography is very underappreciated. Everyone has an iPhone, they can take pictures, right? But this takes you out of that world and into this mystical world of old time photography where images really matter, and you sit down and you take your time and you get a beautiful portrait. Besides the looks of the camera and the autofocus speed, which we'll get to in a bit, the other thing slowing you down is the file size. The files are big, and so this could go on the con list, but it's actually making it to the pros list because I'm more intentional about the images. Like when I used to shoot film a little bit, you're like, okay, I have 36 images on the roll. I'm not just gonna snap at everything that I see. So with this camera, I'm like, oh, I don't wanna fill up my hard drive with hundreds of gigabytes of data over time. I wanna be selective with what I shoot and make it count. I've always felt that shooting with normal cameras takes you out of the moment a little bit because you're just trying to capture every little thing because you don't know which moment is going to be the right one. And with this one, I think you have to develop your intuition a little bit more as a shooter and understand that moments are going to come and you have to be ready for them and you can't force them. And if you're shooting everything under the sun, your battery's going to run out, you're going to be fatigued, you're going to not be in the right headspace to create a beautiful image. And I think this slows you down in just the right way. The last pro that I'm going to talk about is the flash sync speed of the camera. While 1/2000th of a second is the maximum shutter speed you can use, the fact that you can flash sync up to that shutter speed opens up such a creative freedom. You don't have to think about staying at 1/250th of a second or even 1/125th of a second on the GFX series of cameras from Fuji. That's really limiting, and you can get motion blur and issues like that, and you can't control your exposure as well. You have to use ND filters maybe, but with this, you're just free to shoot and experiment despite all the other things that slow you down. This is the one that speeds you up. Now we're on to the cons, and there's actually only a couple on this list because I think if you use this camera, you know what you're getting. You're not buying this as a companion exactly to the R5 series of cameras like the professional full-frame mirrorless cameras, because you're not getting high shutter speeds, you're not getting the great autofocus, you're not getting the hybrid shooting modes. And I actually considered getting an R5 Mark II as a companion to my R5, but I chose to get this first instead because the fact is it is another camera that I could use if anything went wrong with my R5 on set. I have a 45 and a 90, which is like a 35 and a 70 in full frame terms, and that's enough to do most of the things that I do, even though I love my 24 to 105 2.8 for my R5. I mean, that's just the best lens ever for run and gun type work. But I know that I have another option at least, and I also have the addition of a totally different kind of photography being opened up to me, which is the beautiful medium format skin tones and fall off, and the 100 megapixels, which is an insane level of detail, more than double what I have on my Canon camera. So I have two types of photography in my bag, which means I actually feel like a much more versatile shooter because I can pull out the R5 when I'm trying to do fast shoots and the Hasselblad when I really want to get that beautiful defining image that I feel like could go on a wall. And that's why I love this camera. But let's talk about the autofocus speed, okay? So just listen to this. And it didn't even get focused one of those times, okay? Now this is the older 45 lens that came out with the original X1D, and I also have the 90, which is similar in autofocus performance. But you're gonna get that hunting, the kind of weird sound, and let's hear the shutter. Personally, I don't really love that shutter sound. It's a little bit crunchy, but hey, you're getting a beautiful image and you're getting it for really cheap. I mean, for under $1,000, how can I be mad at that? It's pretty sharp, especially if you stop it down to like 5.6. I've noticed that the corners are not very sharp all the time, and that's okay. I mean, I'm actually looking for that fall off anyway from the medium format, so I don't need everything to be super sharp. But just know that the autofocus is slow. It really does not work well in low light. I couldn't even get it to focus with some street lights out in the dark. It just wouldn't do it. So keep that in mind, and also know that when you're shooting in really low light situations, putting your ISO at 3200 or 6400, I just noticed a lot of grain, and you kind of lose all the advantage to that medium format detail because it all just gets fuzzy, versus my R5 handles better. The noise pattern seems smaller. So keep that in mind. I have to do more tests with it anyway, but I just wanted to put that out there. Here are some autofocus tips though. I would say do not use the face tracking because it just doesn't focus on the eye. So use the small AF point and move it around with your thumb, maybe focus and recompose, and you're golden. It reminds me of using an older like 5D series of DSLR, just like a little bit slower, but everyone was shooting on the 5Ds not that long ago, and we were fine with moving the focus point around. I think we've all gotten spoiled by the amazing autofocus in the R5, like the phase detect AF. Just amazing. I never have to think about it on my Canon camera, it just does it. I just set it to face tracking, eye tracking. That's it. I don't have to think about focus ever again. With this, I have to think about focus again, but for that quality, it's worth it. And then if you can't get autofocus or you want to manually focus, the focus on these lenses, oh my gosh, is so buttery smooth. I mean, it's a joy. I think it's focused by wire, but it's the smoothest focus ring I've ever felt. And then you can zoom in on the back of the camera with the touching that button there and check your focus. Yeah, it's really nice. It's a nice experience. And that's one thing I love about this camera. Everything feels pristine. It feels bespoke. It feels right, how it should be. The EVF. A lot of people have problems with the time it takes for the EVF to load, and it's true, it does have a little bit of a delay, but I get used to it pretty much, and again, I'm slowing down with this camera. I'm not like trying to do everything super fast, and most of the time I'm actually just living on the EVF, so I don't even need to worry about the switching time. I'm keeping the camera to my face and just moving around, and though it would be nice for it to be faster, it is what it is. The last con I'll mention is back button focus. I love that on my Canon camera because it just feels like a more intuitive way to do things. I don't like having the shutter button actuate focus every time I touch it because I'm focusing and recomposing on this camera especially. I don't want it to constantly be hunting. So I set it up to back button focus, and you can program it to this AFD button here, but keep in mind that you have to set the camera to manual focus for it to work. And if you set up focus peaking because you're trying to manually focus as well, then you're gonna get these like red lines all the time in your viewfinder, which isn't that pretty, but keeping in mind that critical focus is the most important thing on this camera. To get that quality, you need to make sure that you're focused on the right area, which is harder than it is on a Canon camera or any of the other full frame mirrorless cameras. I think it is worth it to make sure 100% with a couple of ways to verify that you are in focus where you want to be. And now you've made it to the tips and tricks section of the video. So what are some ways you can get the most out of this camera all in one place? All right, I'm gonna have my phone here because I just want to read them off real fast so you have an accurate and succinct presentation of the little things you need to know about this camera. Okay, the Hasselblad True Color Science, I think it's pretty legit. It's not like you don't have to edit your photos, but the skin tones are gonna be much more accurate and beautiful out of the gate. The tones can tend to be a bit more magenta. That's coming from Lightroom, by the way. So if you use Hasselblad Focus, I have seen better color come out of that, but all my workflow is with Lightroom, so I use that. So just take away some magenta and you're in a better starting place. But I will say that overall, much less correcting is required versus my full frame camera. So Hasselblad True Color Science, it's legit. You can rely on it. It's not a hype thing. Don't forget when you're shooting with flash to turn off the exposure, simulation, and M mode. Kind of a pain to get to. Another thing when you're shooting with flash, a lot of forums say that you can only use the Nikon Profoto triggers like the Connect Pro or the regular one, but actually you can use the ones for Canon. See here, this one says for Canon, and you can use this on the X2D. See, it slots on like this, no problem. All the pins and stuff line up and they're not gonna, come off or have any issues sticking like I have had in the past with some other cameras. Totally fine, just have to put them in X mode. So if you put this in X mode, if you put the Profoto A10 on camera flash in X mode, they're gonna work fine. You're not gonna get TTL. You probably have to go Nikon for that route. I don't have a Nikon trigger, so I can't verify 100%, but that's what people say online. But if you have all Canon gear, don't worry. I never use TTL anyway. I always do everything manually, so it works out without a hitch for me. X mode is what you need to remember. Now here's a tip to combat the EVF lag, okay? So if you go to display, and you go down to eye sensor distance, you want it on normal. For me, it defaulted to short, and that was kind of an issue because it takes forever to come up. If you really need to have it come up immediately, while you're raising the EVF to your face, you can just put your thumb on the sensor here like this. And then that's gonna give it a half second it needs to come up and be ready for you to see. The little bit of lag is okay. It doesn't really matter that much, but this is a hack if you wanna have it be up immediately. Another tip I have is about framing. I've noticed going from a 3x2 sensor like the Canon and Nikon and Sony full frame mirrorless cameras to a 4x3 sensor has led me to make some framing faux pas. I've noticed that by putting this mode, if you click the O button, you can go to grid mode, and that really helps you frame your subject properly and not leave too much headroom, which at least for me was my issue. So just keep in mind, you can use the framing guides to help you make sure that you're maximizing the 4x3 sensor and not losing all those megapixels by leaving way too much headroom. Now let's talk about camera straps. The Hasselblad comes with an included one, but I love Peak Design straps. So if you see here, it attaches to the regular lug on the camera, and then you just tie it around this area here, and boom, you have a Peak Design strap. And I think it's a much more secure way to hold your camera. Just keep in mind that these lugs are really, I couldn't even figure out how to take them off, so comment below if you know how to take it off. But it did come off once randomly, and that was kind of weird. So just keep in mind that if you hear a big click, just to look at this lug here, because chances are it might have come loose, but that was like once in 100 uses, so don't be too worried about that. But Peak Design makes some great straps, so check them out. Not sponsored, I just like them. The SSD on this camera is blazing fast, so if you want, you can just use that. I do, though, use the included CFast Type B memory slot because I want to have a backup of my data. Let's say something happens to the camera. I can pop this card out quickly and save the data, and the whole camera doesn't have to be saved. That's an extreme scenario, and I don't think there's ever going to be a problem with losing data off the SSD, but I like to have a backup just in case. And you don't have to use the recommended cards that they have on their website, like SanDisk or the Sony TUF, but those are great cards. I happen to find a good deal with this, and it has a lot of storage, but just know that you should probably use the recommended cards, but you don't absolutely have to. It's just a good idea to have a data backup. When you're transferring data, you can just plug in the camera direct to your computer with a USB-C cable. Try to find the fastest cable that you can, because that'll really speed up your transfers. And I've noticed that transfers are blazing fast. When you plug it in, have it powered off, then turn on the power all the way, and the option on the screen will come up for mass storage. That's all from me. I can't wait to keep shooting with this camera. It's amazing that I can finally call myself a Hasselblad owner. It is a small club, and I'm really glad to be a part of it. And I hope you can too. If you find a really great used deal, let me know in the comments. And if you've ever tried to adapt an 8 series lens with the XCD to 8 series adapter, please let me know, because I'm looking into that for maybe a super telephoto, like the 300mm, or maybe a really wide angle lens that you just can't get with the current XCD lineup. Let me know, I'd love to talk to you about that. That's all from me. I'll see you guys out there on location.